Remember back at the start of this program when I told you about the 6 essential requirements that we needed to record an image. Now so far we've covered most of those. We've looked at light and we've looked at how to get the best light, soft light, hard light, transmitted light and reflected light. We've also looked at the best times of day for light. Now we've looked at optics and we've looked at lenses and different angles of view. We've looked at the aperture and we've learned how that hole controls the amount of light that we capture through onto our medium, but it also controls depth of field. We've looked at time and how we use the shutter speed to control the amount of time that we capture and how we can use that for creative effect, whether we freeze action or whether we blur the action by using long shutter speeds. And we've looked at the medium, and the medium was our recording material, whether that was film or CCD, and we looked at ISO and basically how we can adjust the sensitivity. But there's one thing that we haven't covered, one of the 6 basic essential requirements, and that is the subject. Now the subject we define as composition, and that basically means how we lay the picture out or how we position our subject or position ourselves in relation to the subject to get the most aesthetically pleasing result in our pictures. Now in front of me here I've got an array of pictures that we've taken throughout this program, some of the pictures we've taken throughout this program, and what I want to do today is talk about composition and how we've applied certain rules to composition to get the certain results, because so far throughout this program I haven't explained anything to do with composition. So I'm going to show you a few guideline tips to do with composition that will help you get better images. So if we look at this image here, this is a shot that I took in India several years ago, and this picture basically follows the rules of composition. Now these rules are called the rules of third, and what I've got here is an acetate sheet which I'm just going to place over this picture, and I'm going to just draw on top of that. Now basically the rule of thirds mean that we can split the picture into 1/3 zones. So if I draw through this picture like so, here, here and here, and I've split this into approximately 1/3 zones. And what you'll notice is that the important element or important parts of the picture fall on the 1/3 lines. I've got my horizon line here, I've got the Taj Mahal on that 1/3, I've got the reflection of the Taj Mahal on that 1/3 zone, and then I've got the man, the figure of the subject in there, also falling on the 1/3 zone. So by breaking your picture into 1/3 zones, you can use it as a compositional aid to help you lay out your picture, because the eye finds this particular layout much more pleasing than, say, putting your subject right in the middle of your picture. And if we look at the points of interest, we can see that they fall on the intersection zones on the 1/3 zones. So what about that applied to some of the pictures that we've taken already on this program? Well, here's one of our landscape shots, and if I apply that onto here, we can see that our main areas of interest, we've got the main areas of rock with the detail in the rocks, and the areas here with the green weed, and this area of rock and water moving around, also falling on those 1/3 zones. If we look at the shot that we did, one section on light, look what happens here as well. We've got the horizon on the 1/3 zone, we've got the rocks falling into that point on the 1/3 zone, and we've also got our important piece of driftwood falling in on the 1/3 zone, and we've got the horizon over on this side coming across on the 1/3 zone. So you can see that we've applied those techniques to many of the pictures that we've shot. Even on the studio shots, if we look at the positioning here, the model's eyes are falling on the 1/3 zone, the body and most of the head is coming in on a 1/3 zone. So you can see how those basic guidelines of using the rule of thirds work to good effect. Even when the shot's taken in a vertical format like this one, which we used when we demonstrated long shutter speeds, you can see that my main boulder and pebble is falling on the 1/3 zone along with this other pebble here. My horizon is on the top third, and these rocks on this side are also falling at that intersection of a 1/3 zone. So the 1/3 or the 1/3 rule is a really important guide to getting great composition, and it's something something that you can apply easily to all your photography. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go out and we're going to shoot another picture example, but we're going to apply all of the techniques that we've learned so far about light, optics, angle of view and shutter speeds. We're also going to talk about composition, and we're going to apply everything for one final picture so that we can see it all coming together. This fantastic location has lots of angles, clean lines and interesting architecture that will help create great composition. Here I'm using one of my assistants to work out the composition of my shot. This way I will have a good idea of what I'm going to shoot when the model is ready. Okay, so what I've got here is fantastic composition. I'm using the elements of this metalwork and the corner piece coming into the right hand side of my shot, and then this silver wall of metal running down the back with these two towers just poking up the top with this blue sky. And I'm going to shoot this on a super wide angle setting of about 16-20mm to really exaggerate that perspective. And I'm going to position the model on the left hand side so that it almost looks like this section of metal is pointing towards the model. And we've got a couple of flashes on the battery pack which is going to be illuminating the model down this side, and the remainder of the scene is going to be reduced in exposure. I'm going to underexpose that and take the ambient exposure down. So I've got to start off with a few test shots first and then make some adjustments to the light, and I'm already quite confident that the composition is going to work really, really well on this one. Right, let's get this light up higher and just round a little bit, and John, let's move yours round a little bit as well. So let's just go over to there, stop there, that's it. Let's take yours over to there. As well as the rule of thirds as a guide, I'm also looking to make the picture more dynamic by combining other compositional elements into my picture, such as leading lines which will draw the viewer into the picture, and layers that will provide a sense of depth to my shot. This is very important because your final photograph is two-dimensional, and you need to bring back a sense of 3 dimensions to your audience. Good. As well as depth, I'm also looking to create an interesting balance of subjects and an unusual balance of light to invoke a slightly surreal scene. Here I'm using flash to help achieve that, but you could also use reflectors to bounce the light back into the shadow side of your subject. The type of flash I am using can only synchronize with my camera at shutter speeds of up to 1/250th of a second, which means too much daylight will reach my medium with the aperture I've selected. So I'm using neutral density filters to bring my daylight exposure down to a manageable level. That way I can shoot with a large aperture that I need to keep my background towers slightly out of focus. I'm also using a polarizing filter to help saturate the colours in my picture. There, good, keep it there, that's it. Using flash is a more complicated area of photography that we can't cover properly in this program, but you can easily learn more about filters and flash in one of our advanced level or Pro Series DVDs. Good. Okay, great. Right, just relax for a minute. I'm just gonna check what we're getting. So let's take a look at my final shot and the compositional elements. Here we can see that I followed the rule of thirds fairly closely in this example, but if we study the picture even further, we can see other elements which make this a great shot. On the right we have the metal framework that draws our eye towards the model, and the glow of light on the metal wall.
The super wide angle lens also exaggerated the perspective of my shot as intended and gave me some great lines in the floor leading towards the model. I'm also really pleased with the sense of depth achieved in the image, with all the layers that make up the shot, including the metal frame, the model, the wall, and the towers in the background. And there is a nice link between these layers in the dark objects in the shot. I also used a large aperture to keep the towers slightly less sharp than the rest of my shot, to exaggerate the sense of depth. The angle of the wall with its leading lines helps achieve scale as it draws away into the distance. It complements the metal framework, which has leading lines going in the opposite direction. All of this exaggerated perspective has been achieved by using a super wide angle lens. I also chose a dress that had a slightly metallic sparkle to complement the large metallic surfaces in the image. And the simplicity of fairly neutral colours helps the eye and brain digest the information more easily. Often, good composition is a complex process made to look simple. People viewing the final picture don't necessarily know why they like it. It just has a feeling about it that captures their imagination. More complex composition is something that does take time to learn, but the more you practice, the easier it gets. Often it's a case of going with your instincts on what feels right, and while some people have a more natural ability at identifying good composition, it is still something you can learn. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your photography. Remember to get out there and practice what is a fascinating subject, or may even one day become your future career.